All right. Why did you choose your major?
When I was little, I never got to travel much. I mean, I went to South Carolina, Virginia, and just the general area surrounding North Carolina, but I always longed to go overseas and everything. So I knew I really needed a job where I could travel. It was right around when I was 16 that my sister was volunteering at the World Affairs Council of Charlotte, and she took me to a gala they had. It was at that gala I met several African diplomats, some diplomats from South America, and I knew right then I needed to be involved in the international business area. But I had to decide coming to college if I wanted to do international relations or if I would rather do international business, and that was a big decision for me because I had no idea what I wanted to do. So how I figured it out is I wrote myself a list of what I wanted in a job, and it came down to I wanted to travel, I wanted a fast-paced environment, and honestly, I really wanted to wear a business suit every day because I loved the professionalism of business suits and interacting with other people. And in the end, what my list added up to the most was being an international business major. So I chose that. And through my international business major, I really hope to work with sustainability, and especially in China because Chinese is my minor. I want to work with wind power in China, mostly in China because they have the Tibetan Plateau area and they have a huge potential for wind energy, and there's a big initiative to do so right now. So I hope to, by the year 2050, work with the Chinese government to create wind power in China and then move that potential to the United States so we can lessen the effect of global warming on Earth, and I can work internationally with China and the United States. I also hope to go get an international law degree after my undergraduate years, so that way I can dive into international relations but remain international business for the most part.
Okay. What are your 3 greatest strengths?
I would consider my 3 greatest strengths my organizational skills, my ability to work well in a high-stress environment, and my communication skills. I was a summer camp counselor at Discovery Place Charlotte for 2 or 3 years, and it was my first year there, and I was under a boss who wasn't so organized. And I went there for the first day, and I entered the storage room, and it was a complete mess. Bins everywhere. I had no idea what I needed for which camp. So I took it upon myself. I came in on a Saturday and a Sunday in which I was not teaching a summer camp, and I organized the room. This means I labeled the bins for each camp. I took inventory. I decided what we had, what we didn't have, what we needed to buy, and what could be reused. I also established a new checkout system for the room. I created a list and taped it to the door, so that way anyone who came out had to write down what they took out or what they were bringing back in. And that made it a lot easier to take the inventory for the camps in the years to follow. My second strength, my ability to react well in high situations, applies to that same summer camp counselorship. I had a classroom of, I think it was 22 children ranging between the ages of 3 and 5. And there was one child who was not behaving and he was not participating in the group activity very nicely, and he was bullying the other children. So I sent him to timeout, and I took away his ability to play with the others. And on his way to timeout, I turned away and I was cleaning up the other children's mess. And I heard a crash, and I looked around, and he had been hopping from table to table and had fallen and injured his head. And upon the sight of blood, the other 21 children in the classroom panicked, and I was in a room of complete and utter chaos. So what I did first was I knew initially I had to take care of the head wound. So I have medical training with the Red Cross. I closed up his head wound. I made him stop bleeding, and I took care of him, got him ice and everything. And while I called the paramedics for his injury, and I was taking care of him still, I got the other 21 children under control. I made them all sit on the carpet, and I was able to go get another adult to help me in the situation. My final strength is my communication skills. That comes into play when I had to call the child's parents and inform them of what had happened and how their son had gotten injured in my summer camp. Initially, they blamed me for everything, and they threatened a lawsuit against Discovery Place. And it was then that I invited them to come in, and I explained the entire situation to them. I explained that it was my fault. I had turned away from their son for about 2 seconds, and he had gotten injured under my watch, so I put myself in blame. But I also explained to them that their child hadn't been listening to me throughout the day, and how their child didn't interact well with other students. So I was able to explained to them what had happened and exactly everything that went on. So eventually they calmed down. They still weren't happy, but they did not sue Discovery Place, and they were fine with what happened in the end.
Okay. What are your greatest weaknesses?
I would consider my greatest weakness when I don't do as well as I hoped on something, I beat myself up a lot. I know a lot of people say that, but I beat myself up. It was my senior year, and I was applying to colleges, and specifically I was applying to New York University, and that was my dream school. They had a great business program that I wanted to get into. And I got into the college, but I didn't receive the full ride like I had wished to that school. And I took that initially upon me not being good enough. And so I wasn't depressed, but I honestly kind of withdrew myself from school a little bit because I assumed if I couldn't get a scholarship to the school I wanted to, then I probably wouldn't get one to anywhere else, and I was going to have to settle. And so I entered a period where I didn't really cooperate well in my schoolwork, and I was just withdrawn from the situation as a whole. So what I did is eventually I was sitting in a coffee shop one day, and I realized I was acting completely and utterly irresponsible, and it was just pointless for me to be doing what I did. So I sat down and I reevaluated what had happened, and I came to the conclusion that just because I didn't get a full ride scholarship to the one university that I chose out of the 30 that I applied to, that it wasn't the end of the world, and there were still plenty of other opportunities, and I still had more interviews and more scholarships to apply for. So that day I continued applying for more full rides and more scholarships around in the 30 schools that I applied to, and eventually, with that new mindset of not everything is my fault, I just simply wasn't the right fit for NYU, I was able to receive a scholarship to Appalachian, and that's why I'm here today.
Tell me about a time you had a conflict at work.
In my high school, we had a twice annual barbecue that averaged around $40,000 per event. So that was $80,000 that our barbecue brought in. And for my 4 years at high school, I was the liaison between the hundreds of student workers and the faculty that ran it. So I told the student workers what to do based off what the faculty told me to do. And that was a job. It was very important, and I made sure that everything ran smoothly on the student worker level. It was my senior year, and I was training someone to do my job because I was graduating, and someone who was responsible needed to take over the position. So my supervisor chose a person for me to train, and I assumed he would be good for the job. And I was teaching him that even though we were in a leadership position, if there was a small job to do and we were available, such as cleaning the tables or packing the barbecue plates, that we would do it. We were there to help everyone as a whole, and we weren't simply a leader. And it was then that he informed me, he was like, "You're just a female, so of course you're going to clean." And he was like, "I'm the leader, so I'm going to do what I please." And it was right then, at that moment, I knew he was unfit for any type of leadership position. So first of all, I told him what he was wrong. I informed him of his sexist attitude and how I wasn't going to stand for it and how it was inappropriate in the situation that we were in. But I also knew that I needed to tell my supervisor he wasn't a good fit for this, which it was very difficult to do because she had specifically chosen him. So I did that. I went, after the barbecue was over, I sat down with her and I had a very long conversation about how he had behaved in a leadership position and how he had a superiority complex. And he wasn't fit to be in a role that he had such power because he saw himself as better than everyone and he wasn't willing to help. She was very disappointed, but she was also pleased that his true character had come out. So that the positive outcome was that he was very unfit for a leadership position and the position that I was training him for. So by talking to my supervisor about it, I ensured that a person who didn't deserve to be in a position never got that position. And I also informed him of his sexist attitude, and I let him know why he needed to change.
Okay, how would you define leadership?
To me, first and foremost, a leader is someone who can admit their faults. They have to be willing to recognize when they are wrong. As well as this, a leader needs ambition. They need a vision for their company, their group, or something like that. They need a goal that they can aim to reach. They also have to be open to new ideas. In high school, my senior year, I was the captain of our high school's color guard. This meant that I was in charge of like 30 girls in our marching band. There was a time when I was choreographing work, and someone came up to me. They disagreed. They told me flat out they didn't like what I was doing. They didn't like how I was leading them, and they didn't like me. I took this with a grain of salt. I sat down and talked to her, and I was like, I will listen to your new ideas. I'm open for new choreography. And so I did. I created a new choreography based off what the girls wanted. However, I told her that I didn't necessarily need her opinion of me to be positive, because I was working towards a greater goal, and I was trying to make the 30 girls, the color guard as a whole, better so that we could perform at Bands of America. But then eventually I realized I was wrong, and I was a little too controlling. So I sat down in front of all the girls, and I told them, I openly admitted, I was like, I'm sorry for what I have done. I have not been the best leader I should have been. I will remedy that in the future. So from that, I learned I needed to admit my faults. So you can't be a good and relatable leader if you don't admit your faults. But I was also open to new ideas that would lead us towards our greater goal.